ground beef, honey, eggs, chia, flax, berries, macadamia nuts. Yeah, I'm going to list out the foods too, don't get me wrong, but this is going to be the simplest strategy, the simplest diet to lose fat for all experience levels, okay? I have all kinds of esoteric content, but I wanted to do something basic, something that would be easy to follow, that would have both short-term and long-term impact for people that are just getting started or people that are very experienced. That way you can apply this stuff and tailor it to your specific needs. So I'm gonna start with my food pyramid, what Thomas DeLauer's food pyramid looks like. And if you just sort of even drew this out and just put it on your fridge and took notes on the rest of the video, everything would just kind of click and so much more would make sense. I start with lean meats as my base. Lean meats are what I eat the most of. That is my foundation. So lean ground beef, like 96% or 93%. Lean chicken. I eat lots of lean meat, right? That's just how I roll. A little bit more Mediterranean in that roll, right? The next chunk up, a little bit smaller, is going to be the fattier cuts. And when I say fattier cuts, I don't mean ridiculous. I still eat pretty lean cuts, but that might be like a New York or maybe an 85% ground beef. I'm not opposed to the fat that's coming in from there. I would rather control it with the lean fats or lean meats better and then go to those. Eggs are also in that next hierarchy, right? Those are gonna be ones that I would love to eat eggs all day, every day, but eventually they get caloric. So they're a little bit lower on the totem pole, higher on the pyramid. Next up is dairy, predominantly the dairy protein, right? The Greek yogurts, the cottage cheese, things like that. But within that, I go for the good, healthy, saturated fats, right? The C15s, like the aged Pecorino Romano, Pecorino Sarna, the Parmesan, all those things. Those are in that category. Predominantly the aged cheeses and the protein-rich dairies, okay? Those are the things that are getting me the protein that I need, but also the good quality conjugated linoleic acid and the fats that I want. Next up is my fruit and honey category. So I am not afraid of the carbohydrates from fruit and honey. As a matter of fact, there's enough evidence to support that they're not the same as regular sugar, and I'm active enough that it's important. I think it's critical for me. So that's why I have lots of berries. Anyway, we'll talk about the foods, but that's the fruit and honey category, maybe some maple syrup in there too. Next up is the veggies and the starches, and I put them together because I kind of consider them a little bit the same. When I say starches, I'm not talking about bread. I'm talking about things like sweet potatoes. I'm talking about maybe some starchy vegetables, other starchy carbs that are whole foods, right? Now with that, I'm also having the veggies. But for me, rather than having my veggies down low on the list, they're up in the middle-ish high because I use them strategically. I would rather have veggies for the antioxidants and for the vitamin profile rather than for the fiber. That's not my goal, okay? So I'm getting my fiber in this sense. I'm getting it here, right? And I might have within the starches, I might have like chia seeds, I might have flax seeds, I might have things like that. But I don't consume a ridiculous amount of fiber, just enough to kind of get by. Next up, I have the fats. And with the fats, these are very strategic fats. They're not bad because they're towards the top of the list. It's actually still a pretty big chunk. I'm getting enough from my dairy, I'm getting enough from my meat, but now I might add in some extra olive oil, I might add in some extra nuts. And then at the very point, that's gonna be the things like the treats, the ice creams, the things like that. And the thing is, I eat a little bit of them every day. I don't just have them once a week. I have a little bit of a treat every day. It keeps me happy. That could be my chocolate. That could be a little bit of Halo Top ice cream, whatever, you name it. Next up is something really simple to remember. Generally speaking, 40 to 50% protein. The other macros will fall where they may fall, okay? I don't want you to worry too much about that. But just know that the more you eat, you're probably gonna decrease the protein a little bit. So just be aware of that natural occurrence, right? If I'm eating 2,000 calories a day, it wouldn't be that hard for me to get 50% of my calories from protein. But if I'm eating 4,000 calories a day on a more active day, I'm not gonna get 2,000 calories worth of protein. That'd be too hard on my body and it's almost just too much to eat in the first place. So just be realistic there. The next thing is probably the most important piece that I want you to take away. Try to have high-calorie weeks and low-calorie weeks. And the high-calorie weeks, you eat a little bit more, and you move a little bit more. So back in the old training days, we used to talk about methods of training that would maintain intensity throughout the workout. So like a descending ladder. Maybe do 20 reps and then rest a little bit, and then the next set do a few less and a few less and a few less until you're down to 4 reps, right? A descending pyramid or a descending ladder maintains intensity. It means that you're not getting mentally fatigued. This does this with your diet, right? You just move a little bit more on the days that you're eating more, and you move a little bit less on the days that you're eating less, just because it's naturally how it's gonna roll. So if you think of it like that, it gives you a lot of mental grace to not force yourself into one thing or the other. Number 3, When in doubt, just have a protein shake. It's that simple. Like, it really is that simple. Like, just getting more protein in. You're hungry? Okay, you don't need to go eat something. Whip up a protein shake. It's the simplest thing that you could implement. And I know you have the opinions on protein shakes, that's fine, but if you can find an unflavored one or find one that works for you, just do it. Another thing that you could simply do, I've talked about before, is drink electrolytes. Sip on some salt water, sip on some electrolytes, sip on element electrolytes. Okay, we're talking less than a gram of carbs. We're talking, depending on the flavor, 0 carbs. And the salt can totally curb your appetite. That is a really interesting thing, and something I've noticed tremendously that I established like years of fasting. It works so well to just drink salt water or drink element electrolytes. The salt would kill my cravings. So when in doubt, either electrolytes or a protein shake. You want to keep calories out? Drink the electrolytes. I put a link down below. You can go to drinklmnt.com/Thomas. If you haven't tried their sparkling electrolytes, those are super, super good as well. Personal favorite, and honestly what I use to curb my appetite all the time. They are total game changers. That link also gets you a free sample variety pack. So anytime you purchase anything from LMNT, you get a free sample variety pack so you can give out some flavors to friends or hoard them for yourself. Number 4, this is only if you're someone that is into intermittent fasting. Do what's called burst fasting. So do 3 to 5 days of intermittent fasting in a row, and then take some time off. And then do 3 to 5 days in a row. And this is really, really good for sort of a metabolic shock. So just keep this in mind. You may not be like this person that likes to fast a whole lot, but if you could just commit to doing 3 or 4 days in a row and then taking some time off and allowing your metabolism to kind of stabilize, it acts as a nice shock, a nice little shot in the arm to like get things going. Number 5, balance your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Sounds complicated, and I promised no scientific gobbledygook, so I'll keep it simple. The focus needs to be very black and white. If you are doing a lot of things to turn your central nervous system on, like you're training hard, you're doing this, you're doing that, being in a deficit at that point in time is going to be deleterious to your outcome, okay? You're better off to sort of like train at a moderate intensity and keep yourself in a little bit of a deficit. Or if you're gonna really ramp up the intensity heavily, don't be skimping on calories. It might work in the short term for fat loss, but it's not gonna look good long term for recovery. Take it from someone that has beat myself up. I spent years cutting calories so low and training so hard that the overuse injuries piled up and piled up and piled up, and I had to use like some peptides and other things to get myself back, all right? And now I've learned that, oh, that balance of stress and that balance of recovery is really important, okay? You can dip your toe in the water of extreme deficits. You can extremely stress yourself, but you gotta make sure you balance it with the recovery aspect at another point. Otherwise, something has to give. You can't do that forever. Let me give you my 10 key foods that I'm gonna eat this year. First off, eggs. Lots of eggs and egg whites, okay? Not even gonna give you a specific number, I'm just telling you my foods. Lean ground beef, absolute, positively staple for me. Honey, I prefer Manuka honey or acacia honey or wildflower honey. I like all honey. Don't do a ton of it. You don't have to eat gobs and gobs of it. Chia and flax. Those are staples for me. That's how I get a lot of my soluble fiber in. I eat a lot of that. Fermented dairy and fermented veggies. I'm a big fan of fermented food all the way around. So kefir, yogurt, things like that. Awesome. Kimchi, sauerkraut, you name it. Berries, mainly strawberries, blueberries, and blackberries. Very simple. Macadamia nuts, still a go-to for me. I love the monounsaturated fats that I'm getting out of there, and I think they're awesome. So I definitely go for that. Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. Huge staples for me. Obviously, I outlined that. They're third up on my pyramid. Sweet potatoes, still a carb staple for me. I don't do a lot of starchy carbs with sweet potatoes. Usually the purple ones are my go-to. And lastly, whey protein. Whey protein concentrate is a food group. I don't care what you say. Yes, it's processed, but a lot of things are processed. It is a food group for me, and it is definitely in my 10. If you feel like you are eating too much or you are in a surplus, limit the fats. If you are inactive, limit the carbs. If you feel like you are in a surplus and you are inactive at that point in time, limit the fats and the carbs. If you feel like you're in a surplus, it's probably because you are. That's pretty common for people to figure that out. You can get full from veggies, but there's a different feeling when you have eaten too many calories. You feel it. And the last thing you want to do is add fats in. The more fat that you add in from a diet, when you are already in a surplus, that fat will store easier as fat. That is just basic physics and what we see in the biochemistry. I know carbs can be problematic, but if you're already in a surplus, fats will store easier. Don't get mad at me, get mad at the science, okay? don't overthink the glycemic index anymore. If you are metabolically healthy, the glycemic value of a carbohydrate isn't going to matter as much as you think. If you're dealing with insulin resistance, then it's a bit of a different situation. But as long as you're active, you're going to use those carbs similarly. Don't overthink it. If you're active, your body's going to store them right. If you're inactive, no matter which way you spin it, it's probably going to be problematic. If you're insulin resistant, you should probably just reduce them altogether. But don't sit here dwelling too much on how fast you spike. I worry more about the overall glucose area under the curve over the course of a day, right? How many carbs are coming in and influencing things versus an occasional spike and drop. So as always, keep it locked in here in my channel, and I will see you tomorrow.